Welcome to ACCA SBL December 2024, the latest Preseen, and I prepared the Preseen application note for you, and the business name in this sitting is called Rodnim Business. I'm not saying it is a company because it's a partnership business, and it operates in the events management industry within Harland, which means in this country. Now, the Preseen material released by ACCA has divided these into the introduction and the industry itself. And in this section, we'll be focusing on the introduction and parts of the industry analysis. Before we move on to look at the Rodnim business itself, okay, including the background, organizational structure, and so on and so forth. Now, if I were to take you through to the first paragraph of the Rodnim business, this is based in Harland, founded 6 years ago by 2 founders. Now, what I've done for you, firstly, I'll summarize these into very beautiful summaries to help you to memorize or to learn the knowledge from it. So, for example, the first paragraph, founded 6 years ago using a partnership structure and so on, before we dip into the analysis of such information. But before that, I would like to take you through to the structure of my note this time. Now, I divided this note into a very beautiful summary and in-depth application alongside with my super questions, okay, in a package. And to help you to a certain extent, I tip questions, and with my standardized answers, with standardized and very effective answer framework, so to help you save your time to apply the knowledge into the Rodnim case. Now, the chapter 1, I'll be going through the Preseen material in depth. So as we can see, in this case, we've got 2 managing partners forming into a partnership structure. And for each of the paragraph in turn, the examining team may be setting exam questions basing on the hints that we go through the case later on. So quite commonly, that the examining team would set actual exam questions based on the opportunities and the current weaknesses of this case, and we'll see them later on. Now, moving on, we'll then cover the leadership chapter. From my perspective, it's time that the leadership topic will be tested in the current sitting. So currently, within the Rodnim case, there are 2 managing partners called Amanda and Safi, who've got full control of the entire business. So this means that the delegation to the managers when doing the work will be quite limited. At the same time, there will be no formal collaboration with the external parties. And we'll see later on, to grow this business, our focus perhaps would be to focus on a niche market this time. The chapter 3, I'll be going through the risk management in more detail related to the current case, because you must be aware that the current case business is not a public listed company. So there's no point in talking quite lots of, for example, the corporate governance stuff. It's not a public listed company at all. But there'll be a couple of risks in the event management industry highlighted in the Preseen, including high competition, reliance on the temporary staff, or perhaps the IT failures will have a very serious impact onto the business. So we need to focus on the risk management framework in much more detail. And we then move on to chapter 4, where we will be going through the strategy part. So currently in this case, the 74% of the market share has been dominated by a few major players. So we will be applying, for example, the PESTLE value chain porter forces SWOT analysis to talk about how to grow this business, okay, using different growth strategies in more detail. Each and every time, the technology part will be very, very important. So, for example, the event planning, ticketing systems, the AI live streaming events have not been exploited by the current business. So this may be used by the examining team to set a potential exhibit on the exam day, that asking students how we should do about it, linking with other topics such as project management and change management. At the same time, a few stuff from the syllabus may be tested. I will see how we apply them in full related to it later on. Chapter 6, I'll be taking you through to the stakeholders management in much more detail, because from the Preseen, if you can see, scroll down to the last page, but the net promoter score, implying the client satisfaction, has actually decreased from 9.1 to 7.5 in 20x3. So this means that poorer client satisfaction, we will need to emphasize the importance of that, because this is against the business mission, because the business mission highlighted in the Preseen is to make sure that we maintain client relationship and to provide high quality services. So we will see in much more detail how do we use the Mendelow's mapping matrix to manage each type of stakeholder, including their conflict. We'll also see in the chapter 7 about different KPIs or key performance indicators. So for example, when we manage this business, we'll need to focus on the tender success rate. So which means that whether or not we can get the large project to a certain extent. But according to my industry experience, now it's only for 45%, although highlighted the Preseen that is better than the last year's tender success rate. But from my perspective, there will be rooms for improvement, at least to 50%, so we can be called as the excellent business in this industry. Moving on to chapter 8, we'll talk about the corporate social responsibility in much more detail. So for example, we may be focusing on zero emission or zero waste in terms of launching these events. So in this chapter, I'll also apply the current CSR effort, okay, of this business and the CSR strategy and how we can enforce the strategic CSR, okay, within this business. Moving on to the next chapter, chapter 9, we'll talk about culture and talent management. I believe that it's time that leadership topic and culture topic to come up again, okay? So the cultural part within this business, we can focus on a few keywords such as centralization by 2 managing directors. We heavily rely on the temporary staff, so this means that there will be certain problems with that. So for example, not having enough training, because we are not having enough full-time staff. At the same time, we may sacrifice on the service quality. And we've got the young manager to lead the team, so we need to focus on the innovation as well. Chapter 10, 11 and 12 will focus on project change and process management in much more detail. And I will take you through to the Preseen step by step of how we apply these sort of things in them. In the current sitting, I'll also emphasize on the importance of how to tackle exam questions using our effective and standardized approach. And I will tip a few important questions solely related to this business is called Rodnim Business. With a few exhibits and questions and answers, so you can directly learn from them to save you lots of time before you go to the example. Now, moving on to Chapter 1, Introduction to this case. As I said before, it operates under the partnership structure. The top problem of operating in such a structure would be that we may lack competitive remuneration package to retain those top performers. The excellent staff may leave our business very easily and join our competitor. So, because we cannot simply offer remuneration packages, so for example, the share options, allowing them to buy our share at a low price in the future. So I would say that businesses in this industry tend to be larger businesses. Of course, there will be a lot of SMEs or the small and medium-sized entities, but they may be growing their business, for example, like Immense Bright Business. I'm sure they heard of that before. It's a company based in the US, finally listed onto the New York Stock Exchange in the US in 2018, but started up as a small business, like what you've seen in the Rodnim business here. Another company is called Hy-Vee Group, from the partnership, but listed onto the stock exchange, London Stock Exchange. Now, what I would say to you is that I don't believe that the examining team will ask you what would be the pros and cons of listing the company onto the stock exchange. Because as you can see, on the ACCA study test and the syllabus, the ACCA only included one advantage and one disadvantage in the study test discussing about this. But more likely, the exam question may involve a particular scenario that's saying that if we were to plan for an IPO, which means the initial public offering, could you please advise that in terms of a board structure, in terms of a corporate governance rules, so what would be the best practices of those that we need to follow before we can obtain a successful IPO? I believe such questions may come up, so make sure that you're ready for that, okay? Under the partnership structure side, what sort of areas that may popping up in the exam. The next thing is that to manage this business successfully in this industry, we need to focus on these three stuff. Firstly is the operating profit margin. We take operating profit divided into sales. Now, I would say that according to my industry experience, that if you can achieve 15 to 25%, that will be very, very excellent. However, from the Preseen case, if you scroll down to page number 10 of the Preseen material, you can see the fee income, which means our sales revenue or turnover, and operating profit. If you take one divided through by another, we can see that in 20x3, 4.7%, compared to 4.85 and even 5.1 in previous years. So this means that our profit margin has been decreasing, probably increasing competition in this industry. I will show you how in a second. The second key financial part will be the revenue growth. We can call it as the fee income growth, okay, in this industry. So usually more than 7% would be quite okay. However, if we take the fee income this year minus last year and to divide it into the last year's fee income, we can see that we only have got 0.5% growth in the fee income. Not quite good. With regards to the tender success rate, we take successful tenders divided into the total tenders that we submitted. For example, if you can see on page number 11, the corporate tenders, as we can see there, if you take 58, divide this into 128, we can see that only 45.3%, okay, of that, less than 50%, according to my industry experience. So there will be plenty of rooms that we can improve our performance later on. Now, if I were to take you through to the part 2, which means the overview, okay, of the industry, including so many paragraphs there, and you can read them on your own, including the types of event, what I would do is to summarize the key information to you before we apply to the case. For example, when looking at globally, the total revenue in this industry will be $1960 billion. Now, we can see that onto the page number 2, this paragraph here. Now, as you can see, the $1960 billion not only includes the event management services that we provide, but also it includes other stuff. For example, it also includes the ticket sales. So usually the businesses in this industry may share a proportion of the total ticket sales, but this will not be quite applicable to the Rodnim business. I will tell you why in a second. And also it may include the sponsorships and also the merchandising revenue. So total to be $1960 billion there, growing 11% over the next 5 years that we expect from the Preseen. And for larger businesses, you're able to share 35 to 40% of the ticket sales revenue. Okay, so for example, if a client that sold the ticket for the event, let's say generating $100, but you are responsible for managing the event for this client. So you can share, let's say, 40% of the total ticket revenue from that client. But this part is what I mean by the variable fee income. Would be more applicable to the larger players rather than the small players like the Rodnim business. Why am I saying that this is quite a small business? Well, the answer is, if we can see that the calculation, which means the applications to Rodnim business. Now, Thursday, our 2023 fee income would just to be $780 million. If you scroll down to the last page for Preseen, if you divide this into 39 billion, and I will tell you where does this figure come from. If you scroll down to page number 2, to the last paragraph, revenue generated by event will be $108 billion in this country in total, including the fixed incomes that we charge the clients, that we manage the service for them, and also including the variable fee as well. But the event management service fee income only be $39 billion in this country. So if I were to take our revenue, dividing the revenue of $39 billion in terms of event management services, our market share only be 2% on that. Now, according to the Boston Consulting Group, or the BCG matrix model, I can classify that currently we are in a question mark category. So this means that we are facing lots and lots of competitions, and that's why our market share is not quite high. But in terms of the market growth that we estimated over the next 5 years will be 11% per annum, I would say that this industry still be quite profitable. So this is why we will need to differentiate ourselves from others when operating in this industry. There's no point in talking about, okay, we need to emphasize on the costing part, being the cost leader. I don't believe that this is quite suitable to our company. So as we can see there, I've given you our strategy focus here. Now, I would divide this into do's and don'ts. Okay, now, what I would do if I were to manage the Rodnim business, I will heavily focus on the tender success rate. improving from 45% up to at least 50%. Improving service quality by making sure that the net promoter score will increase, and invest in high growth segment. Okay, so for example, the virtual event market, and even focusing on the niche market, NICHE. Now, the niche market would just be the focus market. Now, the sort of ideas, for example, looking for the eco-friendly event. Okay, so we are specializing in providing events such as for zero waste weddings. So I can be famous, okay, in providing such events in this industry. Specializing in providing virtual events, luxury private events, so for example, the bespoke weddings, and even for non-profit organizations, so for example, the fundraising galas, okay, for example, for a variety of charity. So be the market leader in the niche, in the specific market, can help us to turn the question mark possibly into a star according to the BCG matrix very, very soon. But I also provide the don't here. Don't do this. For example, don't compete on the ticket sales and sponsorships with larger key players. Because in this industry, because we can see that in our country it's called Harland. Now, the Harland's market, the market share, sharing 5.5% of a global market's revenue. Because, for example, if I take the revenue from Harland of 108 and divide this into the global market revenue in this industry of 1960, about 5.5% there. So it seems to me that in the near future, that the industry in Harland will continue to grow in a very quick manner. So this means that smaller businesses, such as the Rodnim business, may be subject to merge with other companies, perhaps. So perhaps we may be bought by others, we may be buying others. We may be collaborating with others, for example, in order to provide the high quality services, for example, the eco-friendly event. We may need to work with quality catering companies to do that. So, for example, under joint venture and so on. We may need to even partnership with the virtual event platform in order to provide the virtual event. So, collaboration under different strategic alliances arrangement would be very, very important factor to consider. And even we need to specialize in order to survive. And this is why we always need to focus on the niche market. So my top tip for don't is that don't directly compete with the largest competitor in this particular market, but to focus on the niche market though. Offering generic services is very tough for Rodnim business to stand out. You need to find your right guy, which means find your right client is very important now. So consider these niche market ideas. Now, taking too many large-scale events at the same time was simply spreading your resources on an unreasonable way. So this is particularly bad for Rodnim business to take large-scale projects simultaneously. So making sure that managing your project quite well, and we'll see how we relay them back, okay, to the Preseen later on for that topic. Now, besides that, we can see different types of events. I'll summarize it for you. For example, that we've got music concert, so generating 27% of the fee income in this industry. Conferences, festivals, virtual events, sport events, even private events, okay, to different clients, for example, corporate, public sector, and even private clients. Now, just to take the information, okay, from the Preseen there, just a beautiful summary that you can see there. But later on, I will apply the Preseen information, as we can see there, to more in-depth analysis, case scenarios later on. And I will show you exactly how we think about them and how to relate them back, okay, to the potential exam questions in more detail later on. Just a brief introduction of myself, and my name is Steve Chen, the fellow member of ACCA. Having exam marker experience for the case study exam for another professional qualification and the marker ICAS, and also having the experience of being the examiner and the author for 4 accounting books, I've got the proven track record helping students across the globe to pass the ACCA SBL exams in the past. And I'm sure that with my extensive experience in teaching the case study exam, I can help you pass this exam very easily. And I'm going to be stopping the recording now for the first section. I look forward to seeing you then in the next one. Bye-bye.
APC, accounting for your future.